All right, we're live.
Yeah.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. It's your host, Kushalmehra, welcoming you to another session and another discussion. Today, I have Pratyasha Rath with me. Hi, Pratyasha. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me, Kushal.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about it. We were supposed to have a discussion, I think, a week before this, but
Yeah.
Pratyasha thodi bimar si, so we had to delay the discussion. But I'm really excited about this topic. But kya hota hai ki I usually do not get somebody who's actually well read, who's
Mm-hmm.
actually from that background and who knows about the
Mm.
subject. So today's subject, as you guys must have seen, the title is Feminism and Progressivism, the good
Mm.
sides and the bad sides to it. So I'm actually very happy that Pratyasha is here to discuss that. But before we get into it, Pratyasha,
Yeah.
for the ones who don't know about you or who live under the rock or in a cave, why don't you tell everyone a bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. See, I'm really nobody that people should know about me, but I'll just speak a little about my background. I have been born and brought up in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. So till my 12th grade, I studied there. I did not want to get into a science background. I always wanted to study humanities. I was extremely excited by sociology as a discipline because I found that so interesting and so relevant. But then, coming from a middle class family, when you score above like a 90%, the impression is that science to padna hi hai. At least you should have a background in science. At that point, I resented my parents for it because they pushed me into science. Now I'm thankful, of course. So till 12th, I did my education in science, and then I moved to Calcutta, to St. Xavier's Calcutta, to do my graduation in sociology. So those were like brilliant years for me because I dabbled in a lot of things. But before that, I was into student politics. And once I was in Calcutta, I had to completely drop out because in Calcutta, it's left and lefter and leftist. So I did not find a space for me there. So I was into student politics, but thankfully, because Xavier's is a non-political political space, so non like the traditional political parties don't fit in there. So in that sense, it was a different kind of political thing that I did. After that, I moved to Mumbai for 2 years, where I was in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And my discipline was development studies, because again, that seemed like a step ahead of sociology because you target a particular very tangible action area to study. At least that's how it seemed to me when I decided to take up the course. And it seemed like there'll be a bit of economics, there'll be a bit of philosophy, there'll be like a lot of things, and it'll be relevant and very contextual, and it'll be interesting. So it was interesting. This was interesting for many other reasons, traumatic for more reasons. But then, yes, that was my educational background. Post that, I worked for a year with an organization in Pune, working on biodiversity conservation in the Western Ghats. So it was mostly from the entire stretch of Gujarat, from of Western Ghats, starting from Dangs in Gujarat to the foothills in Kerala. So that was a very interesting experience for me because I got to work with a lot of interesting people who were working with a very market oriented approach to development, which is something which this had sort of blunted in me. I understood development in a very activist rights based manner at that point. And maybe that was the reason why I felt that this may not be like the one model because I've studied something else. So maybe if I fit in there, I'll be able to do more. And I was my dissertation in this was on tribal anthropology in Orissa, in Koraput district. So I felt it'll be like really interesting to get into that rights-based space. So I sort of did the first major blunder of my life, which again now in retrospect appears extremely correct to me. But I joined a very hardcore left rights based organization which worked in Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, and Odisha. And there, I dabbled in a lot of things. I researched water policy, education, mostly grassroots governance. Um, but it was a space for me where I could debunk and question a lot of what I studied, what I believed in the development space. See these organizations, these activists, these leaders working real time, and understand how this left theorizing actually translates into real work. And it coincided with the 2014 elections, where I saw a lot of really interesting people, really inspiring people get behind the BJP, and not just the BJP, but behind an alternate non-left thought, which we had not seen growing up in like I had not seen growing up in the circles I was in. So it really helped me to vocalize a lot of the angst I was having against this traditional left field. Voice it out on Twitter, get like a lot of feedback and interesting things. And then I sort of decided that this cannot be the space for me, neither can it be the space that the country looks to if it wants to proceed in terms of development or wherever it wants to go. Post that, I worked in consulting, mostly research management based consulting. I moved back to Bhubaneswar because Odisha is where I wanted to work. And though my work was not really limited to Odisha, I had like the most productive 3 years of my life there. I worked on a lot of cross-cutting areas, mostly sanitation, gender-based issue. Sanitation because it coincided with the whole of the Modi government, where water, sanitation, hygiene was a huge issue. um, Agriculture and livelihoods, and health, maternal and child health, financial literacy. I worked with a lot of adolescent girls. I worked from Assam to Himachal, Uttarakhand, Orissa, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, a lot of places. So yeah, it was a very liberating environment also, because it was ideology neutral in that sense. And um, I mean, I'm sure that's the only way I can put it. So yeah, that's been my trajectory uh, now, and I continue working in the development space in the capacity of a consultant. Of course, I'm associated with Swarajya also, as some might know. I have always been a huge fan of the space that Swarajya provided to a lot of people to present a different way of thinking and articulating uh, philosophical questions, cultural aspects, Indic knowledge. So that's something I try to, you know, make a huge part of my life. So yeah, I mean, it's not too much, but that's my background. Yeah.
All right, cool. Now
Yeah.
let's get into the subject at hand. Now I'll tell you
Hmm.
why I wanted to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've had conversations on the telephone where I've shared my views with you, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll so just for the audiences, look, if you come on my podcast, anybody who listens to me, they're used to this concept that ये outrage नहीं करता.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my nature. I don't believe in outrage because I don't believe in things that are not going to basically yield anything. See,
Mm-hmm.
when we present feminism or when we
Mm.
present progressivism or any ism for that matter online,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very tribal. It's very either this or that. बस
Mm-hmm.
यही है, तुम किस कैंप में हो मेरे को बताओ भाई, मेरे को नहीं मालूम मैं किस कैंप में हूँ यार, मेरे को तो इशू
Mm.
बेस्ड क्वेश्चन पूछोगे मैं इशू बेस्ड आंसर दूंगा. So now I want to talk about feminism, and before we
Mm.
start getting into feminism, I would request you, to
Mm.
actually explain to people what is first wave, second wave, third wave. आजकल तो मैं
Yeah.
सुन रहा हूँ कोई fourth wave भी आ गया, पता नहीं क्या 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 market place of ideas में से आता है. But
Yeah.
if you could start with basically unpacking what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then what do you think are
Hmm.
the potential downsides and upsides to that particular strain of thought, and
Hmm.
where you think it is applicable to Indian society and where
Hmm.
it's not? I mean, And I'll obviously give my views post that, and then we can go
Mm,
back and forth on the basis of that. So let's
mm,
start with that. Can you unpack what
yeah,
feminism is and at
yeah.
the different levels?
See, one of the first things when we are taught feminism in a class, one of the things we begin with is by saying there is no one feminism. There is no one way to understand feminism because there is no one woman. So you can't really take women to be one homogeneous collective and all their interests are aligned, and that is why there'll be one way in which you unpack all their things and articulate their concerns. So that is the understanding with which we are supposed to proceed. But in practice, of course, the way, the tribalism which you speak about, it happens from both sides, because there is in fact a dominant way of understanding and experiencing feminism, which says that no, there are multiple things, but in reality it's othering. You either believe in this little bit or not, or you're not a feminist, or you're so and so and so. Starting with that, feminism can be considered to emerge from critical theory in sociology. Critical theory essentially was a departure from how other, previous methods of explaining society were. So the previous methods, like say, or what Durkheim did, or structural functionalism, or even Marxism, or things like that. They talked about understanding the layers of society, while critical theory went a step ahead and talked of systemic change in society, how to change the structure of society so that you don't really understand but correct it. And that would need that sort of change. So when the Frankfurt School and Horkheimer, who was one of the proponents of critical theory, when he tried to think of Marxism, which was till then the most like revolutionary idea of understanding society, he said that Marx sort of premised that the working class or the oppressed class would be the harbingers of change, and that would organically happen. But he was wrong. They said that Marx was wrong because he did not understand, how society would transition. So one very critical part of critical theory was this constant reflection of how society is progressing and calling that out. That this is going wrong, and hence this needs to be modified, and this is the way it needs to be done. So that is like a little bit on critical theory. Feminism can be considered to be that, but from the point of view of women being the front and center of what is happening, and the systemic or the structural order that they think needs to be changed or altered is the patriarchal order, which is common across the globe. The manifestation might be different, but the structure or patriarchy as an institution is common, and hence it needs to be transitioned. So I mean, we also need to understand that the evolution of feminism as a concept is very Western. So when you're asking me about how to unpack the layers, I'm only speaking from a particular cultural and geographical lens. So when I'm talking about how it started, I'm leaving out like our society completely. I'm not talking about what could have been the roots of feminism in India, or say any I said Oriental, any Asian space. So in the West, what happened was, the first wave of feminism was mostly liberal feminism, which talked about individual rights. So it started with voting. It started with the concept of equality in terms of access and opportunity. So that is liberal feminism, if we put it that way, that there are some things which are accessible and available only to men, and they are not to women. So those basic things should be provided to women, so that it's an equal platform on which we can operate. On the face of it, there seems to be nothing wrong. Until now, I find very few reasons to contradict liberal feminism in that sense, because equality to access and opportunity, at least opportunity, is something that should not be premised on gender or the color of your skin or anything. So there are some things which are basic to human dignity and being a citizen, and your gender should definitely not be a barrier. Things started changing when the second wave of feminism started coming in, and that was where the little bit of what we call radical feminism started seeping in. And the radical feminism looked at family as the institution of oppression, because they believed that a patriarchal society, the structure stems from the family. So in your family, the gender roles you have, the identity of man and women within the family, where man is supposed to be the public person, woman is supposed to be the private person. The distinctions between what a mother is and the roles of a mother, and what a bread earner, or who a bread earner should be. So that is where they started finding the essence of oppression to be the family unit. And therein it went into other parts, like it got into motherhood, it got into color, other very integral identities to a family setup. I'm sorry. So that was where the contradictions in feminism started becoming very clear, because to some women family is not oppressive, to some women family is liberating. To the present day, they find agency within the family, they find their support structures within the family. So to expect that that particular system has to be overturned for women to be their best selves or the most liberated self is where it started personally getting problematic for me and for many other women. Also, it was it was clear that it was not taking in a host of experiences, like black feminism, for instance. There was a section of black feminists who are very supportive of the family unit, because as we have seen, black families usually bonded together, stayed together. There were bigger setups, mostly like the joint family setup we have in India, and it wasn't very conducive to them to take on this sort of an idea. But that's where it happened, and then it stretched into issues of childbearing, women's control over her body, and things like that. The discourse that we continue to hear till date, that mostly is second wave feminism. Third wave feminism is what you see in this menstrual blood slathered over your body, and oh, how feminist is Wonder Woman, and Tanishq ads ka, you know क्या बोलते हैं, taking it apart at the seams.
I,
That is like the
I just want
third
to
wave.
add one line. So, third wave
Yeah,
feminism is when the inmates take over the asylum.
that's, I mean, should we say things like that? See, the thing is, Kimberly Crenshaw was a critical race theorist, and she brought in the word intersectionality. So what she said, that is, again, it's a very interesting thing she said, and it's correct in certain ways, that um, women face multiple oppressions. So, say if I bring it to the Indian context, what I face as a woman, I might face some things on the road. I might not feel um, safe, or whatever oppression I face might not be the same that a Dalit woman faces in her household, or might not be the same that even a Brahmin woman who is much more economically weaker than me faces in her family. So she said that the social context of a woman also defines her feminist position. So I believe that that is what the ideal definition of intersectionality should be. But for the lack of a better word, intersectionality since then has been bastardized in whatever way to be a complete opposite of liberalism or universalism, which talked about equal rights across the spectrum, isn't it? Like, that's what liberalism says: no matter who you are, what you are, where you are, it's the same for everybody. So, in opposition to that, intersectionality, or the social justice warriors that we see, say that no, we are like this, and hence we need support systems which are also like this. So, it can't be this, it can't be equal across the board. So, if you want to stand for women, you should also stand for Palestinian refugees. You should also stand for people who are being fat shamed. You should also stand for the entire LGBTQ spectrum. You should stand for everybody. Okay. But the thing is, the women from these collectives which you say are marginalized still do not have the same ideology as you do, which is a hardcore left ideology because it stands against liberalism. So if it comes from a criticism of liberalism, there is no other way it will go from the center other than the left. So it is like a very clear left of center ideology, while women across these spectrums are not, while they could be from the marginalized backgrounds that you speak of. And that in essence becomes the problem with the point where I started at, the multiple feminisms. From multiple feminisms, it has come down to one small intersection of multiple Venn diagrams. So it's like that small. So, how many people can you fill into that particular hole? Is where the critical problem with feminism as it is practiced today stands. So, I might not believe that uh, not grooming myself or showing my armpit hair as a sign of resistance is what feminism is, but if you believe that and if you try to take it down to those absolutely banal levels of discourse, people will move out. Or people will say, I'd rather not be identified, but I'll anyway speak the same thing. So, how does it matter? So, yeah, I mean, I hope I've tried to like
No,
bring in some clarity.
no, I think that this is a pretty good summation of what feminism has been going through, and it's
Hmm.
out there. So, see, here's my take on it.
Yeah.
I actually read the intersectionality paper of Crenshaw, and
Hmm.
I actually found some merit in her argument.
Yeah.
People might find it very annoying who
Hmm.
saw
Hmm. Hmm.
it. See, what I have found out in the general left wing mindset, or
Hmm.
in the general Frankfurt School mindset, if I want to
Hmm.
be very specific, is they have actually come up with a very rationalized way of looking at the world, that societies, the way humans evolve,
Hmm.
societies develop hierarchies.
Hmm. Hmm.
Absolutely true. I have no debate there when somebody comes up to me and says societies in general, have hierarchies, and hierarchies are not necessarily equal all the time. Equal in the terms of equality of opportunity too. I'm not talking about
Hmm.
equality of outcome here.
Hmm.
Even in terms of equality of opportunity, a lot of times, even if you look at Crenshaw, right?
Hmm.
I don't think so. She was as hardcore as
Yeah.
what people who use her theory today
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how they apply it today. So what happens is, I think a lot of times there is see, my problem with the dismissal of the word feminism itself, lock, stock and barrel online, has always been this: you take the craziest example in a
Hmm.
particular memeplex, right? So
Hmm.
let's take the craziest feminist who not only is smeared herself in menstrual blood, but she's got armpit hair, and she is walking around naked on the street and saying, my laugh, my rules, whatever, man.
Hmm.
She's going to go around doing that. But that is not your normal feminist. My
Hmm.
problem now, I'm going to play the devil's advocate today a lot of times, because I think it's very important, so that I know most of my audience are either the Hindutva type or people
Hmm.
who are not with the left. But
Hmm.
it's my job. I always try to steel man the left. I always try to give that you know leeway to the left, so that at least people who watch this, they understand where they come from. So the
Hmm.
whole left wing mindset is identify the hierarchy and tell the society, Houston, we have a problem. These hierarchies are getting too rigid. Thumbs
Hmm.
up. Whether it was the caste hierarchies in our society, whether it's the men and women not getting equal opportunities in our society, thumbs up to the left for that. And even the non-left, many activists have been in that space. The problem is, once you identify it, a lot of people, they get over it. Like, I got over caste, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I got over it. I
Yeah.
dumped it in the garbage bin till the extent that I hate it. But for
Hmm.
them, it doesn't end there.
Hmm.
They're like, so what, you rejected it? अभी तेरी rejection में भी privilege है. अरे ये तो cheating है यार. अभी तूने बोला खराब है. अब मैंने
हाँ.
उसको छोड़ दिया. अब तू बोलता नहीं, तूने छोड़ा कैसे?
हाँ.
अरे यार, decide कर ले, छोड़ूं कि पकड़ के रखूं?
Hmm.
Now, what do we do with that? Because what bothers me in the discussion online, which is actually garbage, if you ask
Hmm.
me,
Hmm.
is that you are either a I hate feminist type, और you are either कि तुम अगर मेरे साथ agree नहीं करते हो तो तुम you are part of the patriarchy. So where do you, how do you think, because you are one of the sensible ones out there, and I say this with full responsibility, and that's why I wanted to discuss this subject with you, because I don't believe I can have this discussion with most people online.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm telling you, you use the word feminism and shit hits the roof. And I believe in a lot of ways, I think India needs feminism. You may not like the word, but I think a lot of Indian women do face problems. So where do you think, Pratyasha, not only as a female, but as someone who is an equal stakeholder in India's future as a citizen, how do you think we draw that line, and where do we know? Like, I remember the famous line by that Supreme Court judge. I keep forgetting that guy's name, but he once said something very beautiful. He said, I will know when I cross the line when I reach it.
Okay.
So it was a very nice answer he gave to a question on free speech, actually, at that time. It was to do with free speech. But my question to you is, where is that line? How do we know that, we basically are now getting into a stage in feminism where the inmates are literally taking over the asylum, and this ain't going to work in the larger society? So what do you think is the solution there?
Um, See, there were a lot of points brought out here. Firstly, about the hierarchy which you mentioned. Hierarchies will always exist because essentially we cannot iron out differences among people. It's just not possible. So, and that is one of the tenets of right wing thought, that people intrinsically are different, while the left tries to believe that everybody cuts across, and everyone has to be equal. It cannot be equal because people are physiologically, biologically different. So there will be some sort of organization, some sort of hierarchy working in a society which will be used to structure it. What happens is these structures become extremely rigid, as you mentioned. They become discriminatory. You know, they become oppressive, and that is one thing, and that is why we need to question them, reform them, critique them from time to time to time. So that is one part. The second part was about online discussions surrounding feminism. I do not find all online discussions to be shit. I personally find Twitter to be a very interesting medium. There is a lot of hyperbole, this and that, but there are a lot of sensible views. Even if it's not sensible, there are a lot of grounded views which you need to understand to, because you can't in your daily lives meet people of all persuasions. So social media, at least if you engage, gives you that sort of medium. They might say it in like a way tu kya janta hai type of thing, but then they still say what their concern is. So that's the second part. The third thing is about saving feminism from the label of feminism. Like that is the way I take it. Many times I have questioned myself, because people say, do you think men and women are equal? I say yes, then you're a feminist. But it's not that simple. Of course, I think men and women are, they need equality of access and opportunity in everything that they are. Biologically, they might not be the same. That's there. There are some things in which women are more capable. I'm studying like infant girls now, and I find that infant girls have more resilience than infant boys to survive. So there is, like, biology has a role, definitely it's there. But then in terms of access to opportunity, I believe yes, everybody is equal, and at least should have the equal amount of agency. But then it's become so cumbersome to defend feminism, and taken that label and go out and articulate what you believe, that I feel if I leave that label to people who want to make a career out of it, or who want to practice, protest, and preach that sort of feminism, and I just continue standing by the beliefs and points of view, and whatever I have, I think I'll be fine there. I don't need a label to say what I'm trying to say. That is my understanding. Because see, in the Indian context also, everybody says that these were the feminists who don't say that feminism did not do anything, because these were the feminists who did it. So the women in the Constituent Assembly, Hansa Mehta or Rajkumari Amrit Kaur or whoever was there who drafted the constitution, did not declare themselves as second wave feminists when they believed that, women and men should be equal, or these are the constitutional rights that should be given to them. They did what they believed should have been right. Now the thing which I have a problem with is that the label has been taken and associated so crazily to a very isolated, very othering group of people, that a lot of women like me also don't feel the need to, push in there and make myself established there and say, hey, I'm also a feminist, I have different views from you, and I exist. I don't want to do that anymore. So I feel like you want to appropriate the label of feminism and speak what you want to. Please do continue with that. I'll still continue being a woman. That's not going to change about me. I'll still see that women need help around me. I'll still understand that patriarchal society has a lot of issues. This is something like at least the Hindu right wing has a lot of difficulty digesting, that everything about patriarchy is absolutely top notch because it has survived, because evolution has given that stamp of approval that patriarchy is a solid construct. But that does not mean everything is okay with it or everything needs to go the way it is happening. That's my concern. You do not need to agree with everything that the Western lens is feeding you, but at the same time, you cannot be blind to things which are happening around you. So, there is the tendency of attaching the craziest memes to an ideology and then discrediting it. But we also need to understand this is the point, and this is the only communication medium where you have to articulate what you're doing. Otherwise, your ideology remains limited to the people who are sitting in classrooms and studying political science or sociology or gender theory or something like that. If you want to take it to a larger audience, it has to be like this. It has to be through some performance, through some articulation of it, through social media, through college discourses, this and that. And in that, if you keep throwing out the crazy stuff in large numbers, people will pick that up and associate it with it and speak about it. That is how it works. You can't really blame people for seeing the crazy, because that is what hits you fast, and foremost. Like you gravitate towards the loony stuff first. So if that is what is so common that people first notice it, then there is a problem we have. I mean, why is it not that there are more sensible discussions in which people find themselves people find themselves associating with it, or those concerns resonating with them? Why is that not happening? So that is one way of thinking about it. The other way, of course, is that people can be tone deaf and absolutely blind to a lot of things, though I don't think that is like the general case. I don't know about Twitter, but I see a lot of micro changes happening across the country wherever I've been. So it could start from, like, say, women in SHGs and forming huge collectives, saving their money, doing their business, traveling across India. That is agency. That might not fit into your, patriarchal smash patriarchy view of feminism, but they are. I mean, if you use the label that way, those are women who are doing what they want to do. They have control over their resources. They have toppled the family gender roles which had been passed across generations. They are doing that. I met a couple of Muslim girls in West Bengal when I was working there on a particular sanitation project, and those girls work with other adolescent young Muslim girls who are not being allowed to study, and they are taking them to schools and ensuring that they don't drop out. So it's not, they don't think that they are like feminists or doing something major. They are doing what they believe should be, the right way of doing things. But this is not exactly how we see feminism being presented in the or like pop feminism. Like that's what it's become. It's become like a feminism light, if you can put it that way. While the real rusty stuff is being done somewhere else, the performative aspects is what we see in front of us, and that is what we keep reacting to. So I think when we actually see real achievements, real change, real transition, grit, things like that, we wouldn't be so complacent about it. At the same time, saying that issues like body, sexuality, gender, these are also not, I mean, it's easy to say that they don't figure in, they're not prioritized in that sense, and these become more difficult issues to negotiate it with for the larger audience who believe that, oh, there are so many issues, why are they talking about this? But yes, women will have to find a way to, you know, talk about that, and yet uh, not bother about convincing everybody and just move ahead. So you cannot really convince everyone about everything. Uh, and you don't even need the label of feminism to do what you want to do or say what you want to say. So we are at that critical juncture where I think the label has been hijacked by a fringe group far too much for us to bother about reclaiming it. And I speak only about the label. The ideas behind it and how we articulate it is the point we need to deliberate upon. How do we pass across the messages, a lot of the messages that feminism talks about, without bothering about the performative aspect of feminism.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of times, what I've observed is, a lot of people of what I call the non-left in India, they have a
Hmm.
problem with the word feminism because ये वेस्ट से आया है. हमारे ancestors के पास सारे आंसर थे. बस कोई भी वेस्ट वाला वर्ड नहीं यूज करना. मुझे तो कई बार क्या लगता है मालूम है, वो वर्ड चेंज कर दो, उसको कोई एकदम सेक्सी सा संस्कृत का वर्ड दे दो, इज्म विज्म हटा दो उसमें से, और वो सारी चीज कट कॉपी पेस्ट करके मार दो और बोल दो पंडित सो एंड सो ने आज से 1000 साल पहले ये बात की थी. और कौन जाके चेक करने वाला है पंडित ने की भी थी नहीं की नहीं. वो मान भी लेंगे ऐसे शुदाई हैं वो सारे के सारे, और फिर बोलेंगे देखा कितना अच्छा कॉन्सेप्ट है. क्यों? क्योंकि 1000 साल पहले किसी हिंदू ने बोला था. ओ गधो, और जिधर से आती है चीज ले लो, अगर फायदा होता है ले लो. कौन बोल रहा है उसको पूरा कट कॉपी पेस्ट करने को? और एंड टू द अदर साइड विच इज द लेफ्ट, यार दे आर मेंटल. दे थिंक एवोल्यूशन नाम की कोई चीज ही नहीं है. मतलब अगर सब चीज नर्चर है तो क्या झक मारने के लिए नेचर थी? अभी मैं when I sit with my left wing friends, and I have left wing friends, whatever, man, I can't stop being
Me
friends.
too, me too.
Yeah, so
I've been disowned by many, but I still do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I sit with them and I was having this conversation. I'm sure you must have heard of these two famous examples which are never discussed in feminist circles.
Yeah.
One is the Norwegian gender paradox, and one is the study in Sweden with toy preferences.
Okay.
So just to
I've
be
heard of this. Yeah.
yeah, so for the audiences, I want to talk about the Swedish example first. So this was a proper study, a long time study. So just for people who are not well versed with this, Sweden, basically the Nordic countries are countries which have practiced hardcore gender neutral level workmanship for 40 plus years now. So it doesn't get more gender neutral than those countries in terms of getting rid of the patriarchy. So they did the study, right? It was a very well done study, and they wanted to study toy preferences. And the standard third wave, or whatever you want to call this, gender is a social construct, fourth wave these days, they say gender is a social construct. So it is not necessarily that the girls have to like Barbie dolls and the boys have to like
But
Marvel.
let me just interject like Arnab style. Gender as a social construct is not like fourth wave. It is one of it would actually be second wave, because they say there is a difference between sex and gender. So
Yeah.
my sex is female, but I am socialized into being a woman.
Yeah, मतलब see, second wave में क्या था कि वो एक आधा, it was just a footnote in a long essay, and fourth wave is the footnote has taken over, the essay is lost.
Yeah.
So it's like that. So that's why I'm actually trying to save the second wave feminists, because they just added it as a footnote. Basically, the third wave and the fourth wave are like, हम वेल्ले पढ़े चलो इसी के पीछे पढ़ते हैं. So what I'm trying to explain to these guys is that Well, they did the study, right, in Sweden.
Hmm.
But guess what? The boys liked the monster trucks, the
Hmm.
girls liked the Barbie dolls. They did
Hmm.
not force them into it, they did not socialize them into it,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. And in Norway, where it is absolutely gender neutral,
Hmm.
it was basically a video done by a stand up comic in Norway, and it was called
Hmm.
the Norwegian Gender Paradox, where they found out that in spite of such a gender neutral societies,
Hmm.
most women took up the nursing jobs,
Hmm.
most men took up the chimney
Hmm.
wala kaam, going up on the roof and fixing the
Hmm.
tiles, which was far more risky. And what they tried to show was the pay gap. I'm not talking about the pay gap in India, I'm talking about
Hmm.
the pay gap in the West.
Hmm.
The pay gap was actually a lot to do because of the choice of work they took.
Hmm.
So now here's the problem. On both sides, you have this weird thing. On the non-left, you have, everything is a Western construct. We have to reject Western constructs. No, no, some things
Hmm.
are just evolutionarily the way they are. And you can't say that the Indian evolved in a different way and the American evolved in
Hmm.
the different way. We are all Homo sapiens at the end of the day. Yeah, there might be cultural nuances, we are not denying that, but at the end
Hmm.
of the day we all evolve as Homo sapiens.
Hmm.
We're going to have hierarchies, we are going to have structures, they,
Hmm.
they, they, they form into different ways.
Hmm.
So my question to you is, when we have a discussion,
Hmm.
how do we get rid of this hardened way of discussing these issues? Because I believe the answer, to be very honest, lies somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
The life is about nature and nurture both. And
Hmm.
I definitely feel that yes, feminism in its very nascent form, if you don't want to call it feminism, you can call it whatever, indicism, for the Indians who have a problem. But
Hmm.
the ideas that came out of that field, or that
Hmm.
memeplex, some
Hmm.
of them have great value to India. Now, you, as someone who definitely is not left wing,
Hmm.
you clearly identify with the non left in India.
Hmm.
And I know, because I follow you on Twitter, and people go
Hmm.
after you all the time for this, because you will stand up for some issues.
Hmm.
What do you think? What do people like you and I, who are just reasonable people, who think there is merit and value in multiple sides and their arguments,
Hmm.
how do we convince, I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to use it, the morons?
Okay. Um, See, in terms of the Western construct, those who feel that they need to reject certain ideas, I wouldn't go for all ideas. Let's talk just about women and how the agency that women should have, or the opportunities that women should have, just because feminism is a Western construct. Um, I come from a state where Shaktism or Shaktitwa is not the word really. The Shakta cult, the Devi worship cult, is the strongest cult in Odisha and Bengal. So Odisha is where I'm from. Bengal is where I'm married into. In the Shakta tradition or the Tantra tradition, there is the concept of Purusha and Prakriti. Okay, so there is the Purusha is like the male embodiment, and Prakriti or nature is the female embodiment. And that nature is not just like the external nature we see; it's like the internal nature also. Some physical, some behaviors which are within, and Purusha and Prakriti together come into in harmony is what sustains the world. So I think the Hindu philosophy or the Indic philosophy is extremely gender conscious. It is. And I wouldn't say gender in the way we understand it, but the relationship or the harmony between men and women. So that is absolutely there in terms of philosophical moorings. We have that. So even if you reject like the Western idea of what feminism should be like, falling back on your own cultural traditions, on your own philosophy would give you a lot of merit, because this is a society. Though I wouldn't extrapolate it to how people behave, this is still a society where the mother goddess is considered to be like the reigning deity. How many societies in the world have that? How many pagan faiths have so many variants of Devi worship, where every 3 kilometers you get a Devi temple or something like that. It's impossible that with the amount of importance given to the feminine, the there is no semblance of equality for women. It cannot be that. So something has happened through the course of history, which we know. I wouldn't want to steer the discussion towards that way. This has been a society which has been invaded, it has been bruised, it has seen a lot of external influence also coming in, and within the system also, within the cultural system also, the rot has set in. So it has sort of relegated women to an inferior space in certain ways, and in certain ways they still continue to have a lot of power. So the Hindu society in particular, Indic thought also gives extreme importance to women, and that needs to be changed from just the ritual aspect to a daily aspect and made contextual. That is all I say, because I met a group of girls, young girls in Delhi recently, and they said, in a society where so many women are worshipped, why are women like raped and brutalized and this and that? So law and order is one part of it. You cannot say that just because this is a society which worships the female form, uh, women are like they don't have any problems. But I feel somewhere in between we have lost that deep rooted connect to respecting women. And when even feminists say that, when you go back to the family and tell your boys or your men how to behave with women, that is when situations will change. I'm also saying the same thing. If you don't want to see it from a Western lens, see it from the perspective of your own philosophy and just contextualize it a bit and understand that the person you are worshipping is also somebody who you might gawk at when you're walking down the street. Can you take that and can you change that and instill those values within your men, and even women, to understand what their power is, to understand where they feature in society. So that is one part. The second part, of course, just because it's a Western thought, nothing is valid in India, is a very shallow way of taking it. It really wouldn't function that way. So there are a lot of times when I have said something on Twitter about comments on how women should dress or how they should wear sindoor. There's no marker. I'm married. I don't have any marker. That does not make me like any less of a woman or any less of a Hindu. You might not agree to it, but these are not things that either allow for Hindus to come together, irrespective of their diversities, nor is it respectful for women who are of varied hues but still, have a collective faith or something like that. So I would say the first thing for men who find everything so flippant and so dismissive is probably take a back seat and let women speak more. I think that would be a very, very good starting point. Let women also have this discussion about where things feature in their priority scale, instead of you sitting and telling that this concern is so stupid and this concern is so blah. And listen to women more, let them talk more. There are concerns. You can't really say that just because this is being presented in such a manner or being blown out of proportion, feminists will take us to ruin and this and that. Ultimately, even if you strip away the label and the theory and everything, these are lived concerns. These are experiences which women are sharing, which unaddressed through years has come up to a toxic proportion, as many put it. So forget about the theory if you have to. Just treat women as individuals and listen to them. Let them articulate what they are facing. Try to be an ally. That is all I'm saying. Like, if you allow women and listen to them without that judgment, then you will probably make more sense and stop like stop pitting everything against, these are so many women, they have achieved so much, yet they don't say anything, but you guys have so much to say. Just because somebody else does not say something does not mean that what is being said about loses merit. That's the thing. Like, some woman who is a much bigger achiever than me, who has come, faced much more horrendous circumstances to get to the level that she is, might not ever bring up her gender. But the fact that I bring it in cannot be dismissed just because of the fact that she did not bring it in. So you get what I'm saying? So it's not really that everybody has to be on the same plane. It needs a little bit more of empathy. And I don't see it going any other way. And I'm trying to talk just of behavioral change. What happens on the law and order side? What happens in the opportunity policy perspective is completely different. That's probably a very different discussion. Since we are talking of ideology and ideology alone, this would be the only way to go forward with it. If you don't want to embrace any label, leave it, but at least have empathy.
No,
That's
actually,
that's all.
I totally agree with you, and this is what has been my solution in my life. At least whenever I try to have these discussions with people, what I do is I say, let's all drop all the fucking labels on the side, right? We'll just
Yeah,
drop all the labels,
yeah.
and then I do this with them. I was like, do you think
Hmm,
women, like मैं हिंदी में उनके साथ बात करूंगा, so
hmm,
मेरे दोस्त होंगे या एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली या उनके माता पिता होंगे, तो मैं उनको
hmm,
बोलता हूँ, क्या आपको लगता है
hmm,
औरत को और मर्द को जो करना है उसकी
hmm,
पूरी छूट मिलनी चाहिए? तो
hmm,
अगर वो हाँ बोलते हैं, मैंने बोला ठीक
hmm,
है, तो
hmm,
मुझे आपसे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। आप
hmm.
अपने आप को बुगा बुगा भी बोलोगे, मुझे कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है। यू कैन कॉल इट बुगा बुगाइज्म, एज लॉन्ग
Yeah,
एज you are
yeah.
willing to follow certain tenets and certain norms. I'm okay with it. But
Hmm,
you know what? You just made a passing reference to policy, and I
hmm,
actually want to discuss that aspect with you. Now, what happens is policies are not made in a vacuum. I
yeah,
mean, let's just face the facts.
yeah.
Facts are policies are never made in a vacuum.
Hmm,
Policies are made from a certain mindset, from a certain
hmm,
lens of looking at the world.
hmm,
It's so now I actually wanted to know your views because there are certain policy proposals like the 30% reservation for women in the parliament. I'll give you my views first.
hmm,
So I was actually a typical guy who believed, so my evolution on reservations in general has been very weird. So I was
hmm,
someone who was on the extreme side, no, it should be all meritocracy based.
hmm, hmm,
Then in the last 10 years, since I joined political activism,
hmm,
I actually changed a lot as a person
hmm,
because it taught me a lot. I went
hmm,
to slums, I went to villages.
hmm,
So my opinion on reservations for women has
hmm.
actually changed a lot now.
Yeah.
I am genuinely confused and agnostic till the extent that I would now actually favor the 30% reservation for women. And I know I'm going to piss a lot of right wing men off right now because I'm going to say that. But here's my logic. When I went to these villages and I saw the 50% reservation for women
Yeah.
in the panchayat level,
Yes.
oh boy, that has worked.
Yeah.
It has worked like magic over there. And you can only see it to understand it. It has
Exactly.
empowered women. When I saw a strong female sarpanch in a village who had no political backing, but she
Hmm.
fought the elections, came up on her own way, and when she's working, I was like, damn, this thing can work if done properly. Now I agree it should not be there forever. You
Hmm.
can, once you achieve a certain parity in society, then you get rid of the
Hmm.
special positive discrimination. Yeah, और कुछ है
Hmm.
नहीं, this is positive discrimination.
Hmm.
Now I agree with that. So maybe somebody can caveat it by saying, नहीं 20 साल तक try करते हैं 30% reservation in the parliaments, because standard answer क्या आता है लोगों का? अरे कुछ नहीं होएगा, लालू अपनी बीवी को दे देगा,
Hmm.
या
Hmm.
फलाना, वो एक बार दे पाएगा, मगर अगर
Hmm.
उसने काम नहीं किया ना तो अगली बार वो इलेक्ट नहीं होगी। क्योंकि मैंने अपनी आंखों से देखा है ये सरपंच लेवल पे गांव में एक बार वो नेपोटिज्म वाला चांस मिलता है, मगर उसके बाद नहीं मिलता। अगर काम नहीं किया लोग दुलत्ती मार के निकाल देते हैं। So what are your views on, I'm not saying your views specifically on the female reservation,
Yeah. Yeah.
but what are your views on the overall ideology sometimes? Because I'm all over the place. I may not
Yeah.
be left wing on most
Hmm.
things. I'm actually a centrist, mildly libertarian guy. So I'll
Hmm.
always in the quadrant, I'll be in the center, but going on the libertarian side, like very
Hmm.
minimal state intervention. But there
Hmm.
is some kind of where I'm for SC/ST reservation, no, I'm for the pre-mandal reservation, and I'm also
Hmm.
for the female 30% reservation in the parliament. But
Hmm.
what are your views on the ideology that influences policy in India? Where do you think we stand on that
Hmm.
account?
See, first I'll start from the reservation for women. I have had, I'd say, the exact same experience as yours, considering that I also worked on the same issue and I did a study on grassroots governance. And that is where I met women of the 73rd Amendment, if I can put it that way. And contrary to what is passed out on social media, saying that they are puppets, they are this, they are that, I think that is a very myopic way of looking at it. There'll also be MPs who are puppets. So a few women who are puppets of their husband does not change the fact that a lot of women in a lot of villages have been empowered beyond what you can ever imagine. So I have like you said it for me. I was also personally very astounded by the kind of work female sarpanches do and the change it brings in the community, like a female figure being in prominence changes the community gender relations, makes more women participate in gram sabhas. Even people like ashas, ANMs, they become more responsive. So it's been a beautiful change that has happened, and I think people need to appreciate that also. It's okay if you say falana ki biwi bani, behan bani, ye bani, wo bani. There is really no way to do that. I mean, there is no way to control that except for repeated questioning and challenging. I mean, you can't really topple existing power relations in any other way. वैसे तो मंत्री की बेटी भी मंत्री, like you have the same dynasty sort of thing happening in MP MLA thing also. And there is a possibility that if it happens it will go the same way. um, Instead of reservation of seats, I think a better way would be for political parties to have an internal reservation in seat distribution. I think that would be a much better way because it would incentivize women to come into politics. So, as somebody who definitely wants to join politics, I really think it would give me such a and with absolutely no backing of anybody else or anybody who's been in politics, there is a goal post that is out there that I don't have to necessarily exercise any sort of clout beyond the bare minimum which is required in every political thing to get there. So I think that would be a very interesting way of approaching things. Of course, by all means, it should be time bound. There is absolutely no necessity of making it a perpetual thing. And this needs to be understood. Whoever says that women don't need crutches to get somewhere, or women don't need your help, and it's not help. I mean, you're not really helping, or you're not like doing women a favor by putting them in. If you actually see who in a political setup would be able to exercise more clout, who would be the one who's able to move around more, who are the people who will surround that person. So that it's all men, 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 men everywhere. So the odds of women getting into politics itself is very difficult, and that is why there needs to be some sort of urgency in putting them in, because that is where the skew is happening. You cannot really say that 10 men deliberating on women's issues for a women specific policy would think the way a woman does. You can't really do that. So there needs to be some sort of representation, some sort of ideas. Of course, it like this will open a can of worms. I'm sure it needs like a more nuanced discussion than this, and I should probably be a little more prepared. But then maybe we can have it sometime later when we talk about why this reservation is different from others and why it's necessary to have that. In terms of policy, yes, no policy is really ideology neutral, and that is why sometimes a a very acute focus on gender also skews certain policies and makes it anti-women, if I can put it that way. Like personally, this maternity benefit policy which the government has passed a couple of years back, or the provision of child care in certain industries, I see it sort of taking away the pushing the organizations or business establishments from employing more women. That's the way I see it. It's an uncomfortable opinion, but that is the way we have to deal with it. A 6 month gap would definitely be very traumatic for women also to get back to work. They lose out on a lot of space in between. Of course, it sounds all very very social justice type, but in reality it might play out very differently. That's why again there is a need for more women to be there and more women of different persuasions to be there, so that they can discuss this, thrash it out, and say that just because something sounds so good on paper, it might not be that. So yeah, I think I'll just sum it up by saying there is a need for more and more and more women to get into politics, and it's not possible organically. Otherwise, it would have happened. And it's not that women don't want to get in there. Just look at the number of women who have managed to get into grassroots politics after the 73rd Amendment has come in. That should be an indication for you that it has worked. And given like that little bit of space, women, more and more women will be incentivized to join it. You might argue whether that incentive is against men or skews the existing power relation, but then I'll argue, does that power relation needs to be skewed? Is it time that we should skew that? Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The only thing is I want to add is maybe sometime in the future, if I find someone who's actually against the reservation.
There'll be lots. I think
Yeah.
that's the
No, I want to find women, and that too women who lean towards the BJP. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to do a discussion where two BJP supporters, and obviously me, the BJP supporter, as a moderator, we try and hash this out. I genuinely am interested in why are there women out there who are against 30% reservation for women in politics. And I agree with your solution. I think it's far better if the political parties adopt it. And guess what? There's only one political party in the entire Indian spectrum that actually does have 30% reservation for women in the party posts, not in the seats. I agree. Ticket nahi dete, but party post mein dete, and actually that's the BJP. Most people may
it's
not
it's
agree with
just
that.
that women feel that at least I've heard this argument most often, that it is a crutch and we don't want a crutch. So it's almost like if you get a reservation, it takes away from your natural ability of being a leader. I don't see it that way. I don't see the natural ability succeeding at all points, because women definitely don't have all the resources that men have, and that is primarily in terms of social networks. The networking of men and the networking of women to get into a power position is very different, and that is not just for politics. It's almost in every industry. Otherwise, how many women move up and crack that glass ceiling in business? Very few, very few. So you might say that they don't get there because they don't deserve it, or everything happens in a very thorough merit perspective, and only the most eligible ones get there. Um, I don't know. I mean, that is like the crux of the argument. I don't see it that way. I definitely don't see it.
Yeah, I would believe in a meritocratic society where I think we have achieved the equality of opportunities spectrum better. I don't believe we have fixed the equality of opportunity problem in India at all.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just a fact. कितनी
yeah.
बार औरतों को घरों में बोला जाता है कि नहीं तू क्यों काम करेगी, तू घर पे
Hmm,
बैठ. तो
hmm,
कहाँ है ये, हम अपने आप को झूठ बोलते जाएं, हर टाइम
hmm,
अपने आप को झूठ बोलते जाएं,
hmm,
क्योंकि मतलब ये होता है ना कि अपने आप को झूठ नहीं बोलेंगे तो पता चल जाएगा कि नहीं हमारे हमारे अंदर खोट है. और अगर
hmm,
हमारे अंदर खोट है तो फिर यार जो हमारे अंदर का सुप्रेमेसिस्ट है,
hmm,
जो
hmm,
बोलता है अरे हम तो जी सबसे ग्रेट सिविलाइजेशन है, अरे इतनी ग्रेट हो तो झक क्यों मरा रहे हो इधर,
hmm,
क्यों हम हमारा इतनी हालत खराब है, क्यों हमारा सेक्स रेशियो इतना खराब है, क्यों हमारे यहाँ इतनी ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स हैं कि हमको हमारे बच्चे की जेंडर भी नहीं बताई जाती है बच्चा होने के पहले. अगर हम इतने पाक साफ सोसाइटी
hmm,
हैं और हम में कोई खोट नहीं है, वी आर सो
hmm.
स्क्वीकी क्लीन, व्हाई डू यू हैव दीज लॉज इन दिस कंट्री?
Yeah.
यार एक लिमिट होती है कि नहीं अपने आप से झूठ बोलने की. एंड माय
Hmm,
बिगेस्ट ग्राउस विद these arguments is the argument assumes कि हमने वेस्टर्न सोसाइटीज की इक्वालिटी ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी अचीव कर ली है. नहीं, मैं तो सिर्फ उनको ये पूछना चाहता हूँ, भाई कौन सा गांजा मार रहे हो, मुझे भी दो थोड़ा, मैं भी मारूं तुम्हारे साथ. कि मतलब मुझे तो नहीं दिखता वो यहाँ पे किधर भी.
देखो, again, I understand where they come from, क्योंकि ऐसा नहीं होता है कि हम जिस तरीके से the way we envision equality or the way we envision power or agency or development, everything that we see in India around us might not fit into that template, and that's why people might talk in extremes. या तो वो बोलेंगे एकदम कुछ भी नहीं है, nothing is working for women in India, or on the other side, everything is working for women in India, and this is like a conspiracy from the other side to malign everyone. So I think the truth is definitely somewhere in between. ऐसा भी नहीं है कि India is the worst place in the world and you need to make like a meme out of it to make it like women are like cows here and cows are more safe than women. I mean, that's also, I find that a very it's a very troubling idea, and it does not seem very correct. But on the other side, usko justify karte karte people go way too far, and they just say that there is like everything is okay, koi bhi kuch bhi nahi hai, it's a totally okay society, and it's a Western conspiracy to make it sound like women are not having problems. So yeah, I mean, those, see, we can either invest ourselves in those war of the extremes or focus on the problem, which is somewhere in between. That's
That's a very good point you made. And you know what the problem with most, I don't like to use the word centrist, but let us assume that what we are talking about is actually centrist people who basically, are reasonable people who are like, ha yaar, pata hai, problem hai. And, and I totally agree with you. The crazies on the both sides, both the sides have these crazies. They hijack the discourse. It's basically 10% hijacking the discourse of the 90%, and the 90% is like, मेरे पास कौन आएगा यार, मैं किधर जाऊं, मैं किससे बात
But
करूं.
pata hai, it's not that. The thing is, we listen to so much and we are invested so much in social media that we see these extremes, and sometimes we find ourselves silenced and we feel they are hijacking. I think in the real world, in the world outside Twitter, Facebook, whatever, maybe Facebook, TikTok. So in the real world, people are there in the middle, and they negotiate problems on an issue to issue basis, on a day to day basis. They are not hatched onto labels. They are not they are not these extreme loonies. They are not thinking in terms of wings. They identify problems, they think of solutions, they reach people who can help them out, irrespective of ideology, irrespective of politics. And that's the fun part. I think that is, once you work in the ground, you see that on like a day to day basis, this is what happens. The thing with us is, because we live in a very vocal space and we hear like a plethora of opinions, we tend to believe that there is a lot of noise happening and there's just noise everywhere. But I think we shouldn't be too pessimistic about what's happening in society. I think we are progressing. I think women are also progressing. Women are leading change. Women are transitioning from their roles with confidence. Men are being enablers of that change in a lot of societies. I still, one of the best moments that I can't forget from my field work was in Mayurbhanj, in a tribal village in Udara district of Mayurbhanj, where I was looking at adolescent girls' education and I was talking to fathers. And this tribal man, like a Santhal man, he comes in with a white dhoti and nothing on top. And he sat and he talked about three of his daughters, and the first daughter is doing BA now. And I asked him, what do you want your daughters to do? Are you worried that they'll get a job or not? And he told me, who cares if they get a job or not? I just want them to be educated. I want them to be better than what I am. I want them to know how to do calculation. I want them to be able to write a letter. They should not be me. They should be a better version of me. And I was like, this man he studied till class 3. He has 3 daughters. He has none of the hang-ups that we hear about men or families having daughters. He stays in the remotest area possible. He's not bothered about whether his daughters get back economic resources for him. He just wants them educated, and he is no feminist, this that, no, isn't for him. So I think in places where we want to see change, change is happening, and we should definitely be optimistic about that. That does not mean everything is resolved. That does not mean we turn, you know, a blind eye over everything. But take issues, understand issues rather than the politics with which you see it when it comes to women. Definitely, yeah.
I agree with you. In fact, I'm one of those, yeah, people on social media who always say social media is not reality, and
Hmm.
I've been the first one. In fact, I've been a ardent pusher of Pinker's analyses that the world's
Hmm.
becoming better, and the data actually clearly indicates that, and even India
Yeah.
is getting better. But
Hmm.
I never miss out on an opportunity on a slight jab at people on social media. At least if
That's
I can,
okay.
yeah,
That's
मतलब मेरी
okay.
podcast पे
That's we
अगर मैं
have our guilty pleasures.
मतलब मेरी पॉडकास्ट पे अगर मैं जैब नहीं करूंगा तो किसकी पॉडकास्ट पे करूंगा?
Okay, okay.
So now
Are
we
any of your trolls here? I can't. I mean, can we see if anybody has joined in?
no,
No.
there are a lot of people watching it, but most of
Yeah.
them actually like your views because guess what? Today the trolls are not watching this live. Surprise, surprise! But don't worry. When we share this later on, we'll have all the trolls abusing you. So don't worry, you'll not be left out. So yeah, you will experience the wrath of the internet. But I wanted to, in fact, the best example of feminism and women empowerment is Dia Nag on TikTok.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I have become my husband. I mean, it's become a nighttime ritual now to do like 1 hour of TikTok and then go to sleep. So I was traveling last week and he's like, I can't sleep. And I was like, is it because you're missing me? No, I wanted to see TikTok. I was like, okay, that's. See, I have been. It's a very. I have been very enamored by TikTok, and it's the banality and the absolute looniness of TikTok. That's like one part of it because I thrive on that kind of like stupid drama. But the other part is how real and how sincere is that medium. I mean, there is no filter on anything. Like Twitter is still your words, and I mean, you have to visualize the person who's speaking it and imagine his background and this and that. Here it's like it is just the way it is. Like they want to say something, they'll say it. So it's like when a man is hitting a woman in a video, there are 100 comments on, how it's not okay, without any of the jargon, without, like, hey, toxic masculine man, that's not there. So it's like, arey aurat pe haath uthaya tu namard hai, okay, something like that. But then, that is reflective of change. And then if it was in Twitter, like namard bola, that means LGBTQ ke against or masculinity ke against. So that would have been the discussion. So in Twitter it goes like round, and because your words have to be measured in that intersectionality scale. But yahan pe TikTok mein you just hear it the way it is. So one lady will be like, मर्द तो प्यार में ही हाथ उठाता है, and other one be like, बहन तुम क्या बोल रही हो? And it's like it's so interesting for me from a sociological perspective to see how these young people think and how they behave and what is going on in like the peri-urban areas of India. How do they, what is their aspiration, what do they want to be? It's fun, it's fun. I think everybody should be there. I'm glad I converted you and pushed you into.
Oh yeah, so I'm just a sucker for cheap humor. That's all.
Yeah.
So I'll
Yeah.
tell you a very interesting story. I was working in this slum in Mumbai, and
Hmm.
I'm not endorsing the actions, but I'm just
Hmm.
giving you a story of how young people have started to think. So I was sitting with this kid. He was from Uttar Pradesh.
Hmm.
वहाँ पे ही रहता है, तो मेरे साथ बैठा था, बोलता है साहब आपको पता है हमारे यहाँ पे एक बदलाव आ रहा है। मैं बोला अच्छा क्या आ रहा है बता। बोलता है हमारे यहाँ पे 3 टाइप की औरतें हैं। मैं बोला
Huh.
अच्छा बता 3 टाइप की औरतें कौन सी है। बोलता है हमारे यहाँ पे मराठी औरतें रहती हैं, फिर दक्षिण भारत की मतलब तमिल औरतें बोलते रहती हैं, और हमारे यहाँ पे हमारी उत्तर भारतीय यूपी बिहार की औरतें रहती हैं। बोलता है मालूम है मराठी औरत को उसका पति हाथ उठाता है ना तो वो 2 डबल रिटर्न में देती है, दक्षिण भारतीय को देता है ना तो वो 4 देती है रिटर्न में। बोलता है हमारी औरत अभी तक हाथ नहीं उठा रही है सर। तो मैंने बोला तू कहना क्या चाह रहा है? बोलता है हमारी औरतें थोड़ा उनको हक कम है मेरे को लगता है सर।
Nice.
क्या इंटरेस्टिंग तरीका था उसने बताया।
I know.
उसका क्या
It's
तरीका था? It was I mean I'm not endorsing the violence or anything, but I'm saying,
yeah.
see how that
How
young kid was
exact?
understanding कि हम थोड़ा पिछड़े हुए हैं, ये लोग की औरत धोती है अपने पति को रिटर्न में।
Huh? Huh? See that it's always like that. Even when we in studies where I've tried to understand domestic violence, it's not always absolute कि मतलब हाथ उठा दिया तो तू गया मतलब तेरे को जे because real life does not happen like that. That's the thing. I mean, it's politically incorrect to say these things. You know, कि how could you not intervene if a woman said like this? But I just hope these nuances don't get lost in the discussion about feminism. That the real world is not how we theorize it to be. It's something different, and once you are able to bridge that gap, then you'll be able to get a lot more richer perspectives, which will enhance your theory. And I hope that is being done by the academia or something like that. I hope there are some like these JNU students do studies on Savita Bhabhi ka Gujarati root and all that. They should like study TikTok and like bring out some
Yeah.
study on.
Oh man, I hope these people don't study TikTok because they'll find caste hierarchies in that too.
There'll be so much. There'll be so much. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So they're crazy people. But you know what? These things are getting discussed. Look, you and I are having this discussion. I know my podcast platform is not that very huge, but it's getting there slowly but
Yeah.
surely. A lot of
Yeah.
people now actually, if I don't do a podcast, tell me, भाई क्यों नहीं कर रहा है? बात कर. And now it's kind of expected. कोई भी subject होगा जिसमें थोड़ा बहुत critical element discuss होने वाला, कुशल को करने दो, उसको तो सारे ही गाली देते हैं. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of branded as the crazy one. So I'm actually glad. And you know what? It's been an hour and
It's
20.
been a long time. I
Yeah, no,
know.
but that's the good part about podcasts. So just a
Yeah.
few passing remarks before we wrap things up. You know what? This is exactly what I was expecting, guys. Anybody who's going to watch it, who's watched it live right now, or who's going to watch it later, I know a lot of you basically are going to watch it later. Try and get these things into your head. Life is not binary. Life is not black or white. Most of our lives, the way we live, whether it's you or me or Pratyasha or anyone on planet Earth, we live in the gray area. We negotiate with people on a daily basis. We negotiate from the kanda bhajia wala to a major business deal with our parents, with our wives, with our husbands, with our children. And there is nothing that is set in stone. Life is about nuances. Life is about centrist thinking. Most people, if you ask me, are not ideologically inclined. They just pick a camp because they think if shit hits the roof, I want to be on one side. That's most people I've met in my life. If you go down, I was like, "तू ये क्यों है?" तो उनके पास आंसर भी नहीं होता. And most people are reasonable. So I'm actually very happy that I got to discuss this with Pratyasha because, in my honest opinion, she's actually one of the most sane voices on social media. Otherwise, I think social media, if you ask me, is exactly what happens when the inmates take over the asylum. That's what social media is, in my humble opinion. And Pratyasha, I'm really grateful to you that you've done this discussion. Obviously,
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's
yeah, and
really
we're going to
interesting.
discuss the female reservation
Yeah.
part someday in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, guys, on that note, I want to thank you all once again for watching me. And until next time, take care, goodbye, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you to those who tuned in. Bye.